welcome back to From Book to Business. I'm Trina Boice, best-selling author of 30 books, and today I have a very special guest, Christopher Cunningham.
Hi guys, so good to see you again, Trina. When you introduced yourself, it reminded me of when we saw each other in that restaurant in Provo. What was that, 2.5 years ago? And I said to your brother, I introduced you as the best-selling author of more than 50 books, and you were like, "Well, it's only 30." I think that's the only way anyone could ever make you feel bad for best-selling author of 30 books. But that was my embarrassing moment that day.
No, not at all. Are you kidding me? So, Christopher Cunningham is the managing editor at Public Square magazine and an incredible blogger whose articles have been read more than 18 million times. So, what I'm hoping that Christopher will be able to do today is share some of his magic with us, get the secret sauce all over us, and teach us how do we get that many readers? First, tell us about Public Square Magazine and what you're doing, and then share the juicy gems.
Well, it's interesting because I always feel like I look at these other success stories of people and feel like I want to figure out what the magic is, what the juice is. I feel like I'm sort of banging away every day, just wishing I wish I knew what these people were doing to have these tens of millions every day or whatever, and wishing I kind of knew that secret. So perhaps there is no secret. Perhaps it's just kind of hitting away. But yeah, so we have a new project, Public Square Magazine, that's been up for about 4 months now, publicsquaremag.org, and it's a cool project. It's me and a few other like-minded people where we kind of looked out and we saw a lot of people screaming at each other, that the way we've spoken to each other has really changed in the internet age. It's really kind of disrupted what we think of as the public square, where neighbors could kind of talk about what was happening. And so we thought, well, why don't we use the same space to try to fix sort of the way we talk to each other, and try to write articles that are more respectful. But one of the other things I think that we noticed is that people who try to be respectful are often not bold. That's kind of the way they are respectful, is they're no longer bold about what they are. And so we try to do both. We try to write stuff that is bold and respectful and open to a great dialogue. And so that's been sort of our mission and what's really motivating us. And it really focuses on issues. Our background, my background, the magazine I wrote for before, helped found, was LDS.net. And so it was really kind of a faith-based perspective. That's where we were coming from. And so that's kind of where a lot of us are coming from, but it's been fun pulling in other voices. We just published a piece last week from an atheist Marxist, for example. And so that was fun because I think it's not our perspective necessarily that's what matters. It's this idea of it's a way of talking to each other, and that's what
and sharing perspectives, and that's how we learn. So as you mentioned, your material from all the places where you've been writing for the last number of years are very faith-based, and it seems like religion and politics tend to bring out the ugly in people, but even more now, people almost on any topic start to argue, and like you say, in such a disrespectful manner. So what is it you're doing to try to calm everybody down and learn from each other rather than fight and be so ugly?
Well, it's interesting because I had this experience trying to draw in traffic, and it seems so many of the things that you can do to bring in traffic to the site are divisive. It's a lot easier to generate traffic to your site when you are generating very strong active emotions. And so one thing, the other people I'm working with, they're more academics, and so they didn't have the background sort of drawing. And so it's been an interesting relationship working with them because they want to make things very sort of bland, kind of try to, and my thing is, no, we got to punch this up. And so it's been interesting trying to maintain the things. How do we write something that gets people passionate and that gets them active, but that it's not anger, because anger is the easy way to do that. So how do we make people excited, or how do we make people feel something that's different that way, that's still going to generate the traffic, but without the but without kind of pulling people apart, without the divisiveness. And that is, it's a tricky question, and it's something that we are asking ourselves that very question every day. What we're finding though is there's a real appetite for it. I think a lot of people are very weary of the way that they are getting the news most days. And so when they find people who are trying to do it honestly the way we are, we're finding we're finding a large audience of people that say, yes, this is how I want to learn from other people. Yes, I feel like I can interact with you, because when you're writing, you're acknowledging, okay, yes, this, and kind of making sure that you're not overstating your case and things like that. So anyway, I think that answers your question.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point about engagement. I mean, you can write the best article, the best blog all day long,
Yeah,
but if nobody's engaging with you, what's the
doesn't
point,
matter.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so um, obviously having a passionate topic or something that people can feel passionate about is one way to engage people. But what are some tips for bloggers, for example, when they're just writing about whatever? How would you encourage them to get that engagement, whether it be asking a question at the end or a call to action, or what do you recommend? What have you seen that works?
Well, when we were working, so we had this great URL, lds.net, and we wanted to put a blog on it to sort of drive traffic. And so what we did was, rather than look for sort of, these kinds of how do we do it, we looked for who are we doing it for. I think sometimes it's easy to get lost when you're sort of in this world and you're looking at Google Analytics all day, or you're looking at engagement rates or click-through rates, that all of those, every hit is someone who wanted to read what you had to say. And a bounce rate is someone who didn't like it, someone who you didn't meet their needs. And I think when we can see those numbers for that, I think it starts to affect our behavior more. So what we had done with that website is we actually identified individual people, created what we called audience person. Well, we didn't call them that. That's what it's called, audience personas.
Yeah, in
Where
marketing
we
we
would
call
say,
it an avatar.
oh, is that how you guys
Yeah,
use it?
yeah.
Yeah.
So you
And
actually
so,
create a name, what the gender is, where they go shopping, where do they go online, and you flesh out this avatar. Anyway, sorry, go on.
so we then came up with, okay, so here's who our audience is, and then we came up with sort of these 6 avatars then within this space. And so then every time that we would sit down to write an article, we would say, okay, which of our avatars is this for? And then we were able to use our Google Analytics data to then go back and say, okay, which of these people are actually visiting the site? Because you can find all that information out using that. What age are the people visiting? What technology are they using? What are their other interests? How did they get there? Are they coming through Facebook? And you can learn a lot of that information that way. And so you can kind of start to say, no, that person's not coming. And then you can start to see, oh, we have all these people that are of this kind of type, and we don't have an avatar for them. And so then you can start targeting them a little bit better by creating. And that's what we ended up doing, is we added and took away and adjusted the avatars that
So
we have.
are
So
you
I think
just
that's the
using
first thing for any content creator, is they really have to, and I think for writers in particular, which is where I come from, I hired a lot of interns, and everyone that came in always came in wanting to tell the world what was on their mind, which you understand. I think everyone wants that. But I think if you want to be successful content creator, you have to be creating content for them, not telling them what you want them to hear. You have to be giving them what's useful for them.
That's an excellent point. So are you using just simply Google Analytics, or are there some other tools that you recommend?
So for us, Google Analytics is what we would use to refine the personas. We would build the personas on a tool called Extensio, Xtensio.
Uh-huh.
They have a great template. You have to create an account, but the account is free, and you can use most of what I think you need to on Extensio to build these user templates or avatars.
Yeah, okay, that's a great tip. Okay, so you mentioned traffic. Obviously, everybody wants more traffic, and traffic simply
Yeah.
means all the people that are coming to you. So, what are you doing to get traffic? That's like the question everybody wants to know, right?
Yeah. So in my experience, the number one determination of traffic is a good title. Um, there's really nothing else that I think that we can do that's going to have as big of an impact on your title. And I think until you've kind of done this enough to realize that, titles are often sort of either the first thing that pops into your mind where you're just kind of describing your idea, or your last second, oh, I got to come up with, oh, here's kind of what summarizes what I ended up writing. And I don't think any of those approaches are going to consistently get you titles that are going to perform the best. Um, when we were trying to figure out what kind of titles would perform the best, it wasn't unusual for us to brainstorm about 50 per article. And
Wow.
we would spend, oftentimes, if you looked at the full amount of time we would spend on writing an article, about a quarter to a third of that was on a title. Um,
Oh,
and so I think that's something that was very successful for us, especially on LDS.net. I think it's been even more important for us now in Public Square Magazine, where it's even harder to pick those titles that are going to attract the audience without dividing the audience. Where you're trying to do that without generating kind of those more negative emotions. It's a tightrope to walk. So we're spending even more time figuring that out now. So that's, I think, the first kind of big subject, I would say. And in terms of how to write better titles, I think what I did that seemed to have the best help in sort of getting me to a place that was helpful was reading lots of other magazines and newspapers with people who are copywriting professionals and seeing which titles I wanted to click on. So oftentimes I would I have about 50 websites that I read each week. So I would just go through them each morning and I would click, all the articles that I'd want to read just for myself. But then I would copy and paste all those titles in and create a list. And this is something that most copywriters are going to do is they'll find ad that works and then they'll kind of put it in and then they'll kind of take out the words that are specific to that title and then just kind of add and play with it. And so then you can go back and look at these titles and be like, so if I wanted to use this title for this article, how could I change it to meet this article? And so I think that's an easy way to start writing better titles is to just steal other people's titles.
but to be a reader, that's an outstanding tip is to see what else is out there, what's working. You got to
But reading
read.
the titles specifically, if you want to write better titles,
Right.
spend time reading titles.
Right. Yeah.
And notice the ones that you want to click on.
And the
One
entire
of the
tip of actually writing better titles is so huge
yeah,
because I'm kind of old school. I always tend to think of alliteration or something clever and witty or something that's vague so it intrigues you. That does not work in online copywriting
this is
anymore,
what newspapers did all the time is they'd have something clever,
right?
but it doesn't work. And I think keywords is something that we had focused on as we were researching it. But this is what at least what we discovered is that timely content, stuff that's going to get 85+% of its traffic from social media because it was about some news event. Having good keywords didn't give us much value at all because we were never going to get that long-term benefit from search engine traffic. Now, the search on your evergreen content, the stuff that you put out and it's not timely, but it answers a question that someone is searching on Google. I mean, obviously for that, you need to, keyword pack them and make sure you're very careful. But for where you're focused on social media, which is a lot of what we're doing right now, is that I'm finding that, and I know this is kind of against the conventional wisdom, but we're finding that keywords are not as useful as we thought they were, and that trying to find things that ideas that kind of contrasting ideas is especially useful. Saying things that people wouldn't expect. where they would be like, oh, that's unusual. That seems to be very effective for us. Kind of anything that would make someone stop and be like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem easy for me to process, and that's what's performing well for us. There's a psychological technique for education that we stumbled on and have used to great effect, where it's a disequilibrium. That's what it's called. So Piaget, who was an education researcher, discovered that the best way to get someone to learn and to engage was to kind of break their preconceived notions first. And so once you break their preconceived notions, then their mind wants to get back in equilibrium, that everything makes sense again. And when everything doesn't make sense, they feel the sort of psychological urge to make sense of the world again. And so we've been able to use that to great effect in our titles, where we're trying to write something where someone's like, wait, hold on, that can't be true, or, well, you need to explain that to me. And then when we sort of create this disequilibrium, that is what's helping us generate that traffic more effectively. Now, a little bit tricky, because one easy way to create the disequilibrium is to ask a question without an answer. Like, you'll never guess who did this, but Facebook especially is heavily penalizing these kinds of things where you need to click on it to answer the question. And so that's an easy way to create the disequilibrium, but it doesn't work if you're trying to generate social media traffic anymore.
Interesting. Okay, so can you give us an example of how you would use that in a title?
Yeah, now I need to. Okay, so here's a real simple example. This is not a great example, but this is something we often do when we struggle to find a title. So this is our head story right now. Equal partnership in an individualistic America. And so here, what she's talking about is how, there's a lot of trends towards individualism over the last 30 years, and how has that affected marriage? And so what we've done is we've paired the word partnership with individualistic. And so these are two contrasting ideas that don't fit together. And so by putting those two contrasting ideas that don't work together, we tend to generate more traffic. So that's a simple one. This is a great one, our last one, and this did do very good traffic for us. The title was Rock and Religion, the Pursuit of Everlasting Love. So obviously rock and religion, you don't usually associate rock and roll and religion together. That's something that you would have seen in an old newspaper, right? So this kind of play on words. But because they were contrasting, they're like, wait a minute, how are you comparing those two? People want to click on it because they want to understand, wait, how does rock and roll and religion play together when it comes to the topic of love? It was kind of on Valentine's Day when everyone was talking about that. Anyway, so those are, I think, two examples. And hey, since those were the top two on the website, that suggests I was right, that we are using that to good effect. So
That's really awesome. I love that. Now, the next question that everybody wants to know is, how do you monetize your blog? Again, you could be writing brilliant articles all day long,
sure.
But if it doesn't pay the bills, that's a problem.
If you're willing to write for other people, serve their needs, there's a lot of money to be made in writing online. For example, I did a lot of work for a law firm I would write blogs for their website. We'd look up what people were searching, and then when someone who lived close to the law firm typed in, what should I do right after a car accident if I'm thinking I might sue, or whatever the question was, they would come and I would have written something for them that answers their question. And that builds a relationship with the law firm so that when they do decide to get a lawyer, they're more likely to go to them. And pretty much every customer-facing company in the country today is writing content like this and continuing to do so. So there is lots and lots of work like that available to freelancers. But if you can use your website the same way I think you talk about using your books as a way to generate other things, I mean, that's what it is. Websites, you can use your own website the same way that law firm used their websites to build relationships with customers. And so if you have a website where you talk about about biking, and then you can also offer a consultancy service where you're telling people how to customize their bikes. That's where you can generate money off of your blog, is by, people who've been blogging for a long time, they have enough built-in customers who trust them that you can monetize that a lot of different ways.
I'm actually working with a client right now who has a lot of content he wrote on a blog. And he says, someday I want to write a book. And I was like, you just did. The format is a little bit different, but there are even companies that will take all of your blog content and format it for you and turn it into a book. And then you've got a book. So for bloggers that might be getting discouraged now, keep writing, because the content can definitely be repurposed.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Other ways of monetizing, obviously, are using affiliate marketing, using those as links inside your blog. And in fact, I think I just posted a video last week about that. So be sure and check out. By the way, be sure and check out and subscribe to this channel, and you'll be notified every time I upload new videos. And so sometimes I interview people like Christopher, and then sometimes I put how-to videos up to teach you how do you put in affiliate links. And anytime anybody clicks on that link within your blog and buys something on Amazon, for example, you earn money. And so that's a simple way to monetize. And the very least, the first thing that you should be doing, because it is so simple. Okay, so one of the very first things that I teach my clients who have blogs is to begin creating a funnel. And a funnel is just simply a way to continue conversing with someone who's landed on your website or your blog. So you offer them a free gift. We call it a lead magnet, and you've seen them online, I'm sure. It could be a free ebook or PDF or report or checklist or something that helps them accomplish whatever it is that you're specializing in or talking about. And then they, in exchange for that gift, they give you their email address. And then that begins this nurture sequence. So you continue to talk to these readers that have found you. So Christopher, tell us what you do. I know you have a newsletter. Tell us what you do to connect the blog with the newsletter and to continue that conversation on with your readers.
So I think what we found is like you said, it's really important to build a relationship with folks, because for us, I think for most sites like ours, you have some articles that have tremendous reach. You'll have something that goes, we'll call it niche viral, right? Where you'll kind of fill up your niche, and most people who are reading content like yours will see your piece. And then most of your pieces will kind of retract then back to your steady audience. And so the key is when you go sort of niche viral, when you go to kind of whatever your biggest articles are, whether that's 10,000 or 100,000 or a million, kind of whatever space you're in, that those people, you convert as many of them as possible to regular readers to increase that traffic. And those regular readers are then the ones who are more likely to become your customers. And so obviously there's a lot of ways to kind of convert them. I think, one of the more popular ways is getting them to follow you on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, where they're then seeing your content. But one of the most steady, like you're saying, is email, because then you're not dependent on the algorithms of these other people.
Right.
And for us, when I had worked on LDS.net before, email newsletters didn't do anything for us. We had our audience trended much younger, kind of 18 to 30 was our primary audience. And they were using their email that way. They would have seen that newsletter like spam like. This newer effort is trending towards an older demographic, and they love email newsletters. They love getting content that way and seeing, okay, here's the articles that they had published this week. And so it's been a really good way to, when people come to our site, and so in our case, where our product is the content, which I think is probably unique, when we have one of these pieces that goes particularly viral, that's the magnet. We've done very well on this piece. They want to view the piece, and so then that's what brings them to the site, where there's then the invitation. And if we've done our job right, they'll like the content enough that they'll be like, oh yes, I would like to see more like that. And so then that's when we're then getting the email newsletters. And the people who are signing up for our email newsletters are reading much more of our content than any of our audience segment, because they're seeing every single piece of content that
Yeah.
we're producing, which is unlike anything that you're getting from any social media platform at this point. Those are so much more fragmented that there's just no way to capitalize on the people who like a Facebook page as much as someone who's signed up for your newsletter. So if your audience would use it, I mean, it's worked very well for us at Public Square. So
So would
definitely
you
worth something to
recommend?
consider. And it's so easy. I mean, I don't think any of the people who are watching here will be surprised. But I mean, we just use MailChimp. It's a free account. It can grow with you. I mean, it can grow a lot with you while it's still a free account. So I
Yeah.
mean, this is a tool, and it's just out of the box and super user friendly. And so yeah, so there should be no sort of technical barrier to say, oh, I don't know how to put, how
It's
to
pretty
sign up for a
easy. Yeah.
newsletter. Yeah, it's super simple. If you've been sort of scared that, oh, I don't know how, just run out to MailChimp.
Would you recommend as a tip for bloggers to always, at the end of every blog post, invite to join the newsletter?
Would I recommend that?
Yeah.
I wouldn't,
Oh,
but I think it's gonna. I know. I think it's really gonna depend on the nature of your site and what you're doing. I think for us, we're trying to create something that looks like it's sort of above the fray, and something like asking people to join. It does. I think people then see it as a little bit more self-serving, which we all are. But I think a lot of people don't want to be reminded of that. So I think if there's another way you can have it where it's present, perhaps it's it pops up immediately, where it's something that doesn't appear like the actual author is engaging in that. That's been more effective for us than
okay.
ending every piece, which seems to, I think, cheapen it. Now, that advice, I've read a lot smarter people than me give the opposite advice. So I'm sure it works differently for different types of content and different types of websites. So don't
Good point.
automatically apply that to yours. But I think from the first thing you're talking about, it's really all about your audience and your people. And I think when you're answering questions like that, we'll find out. I mean, should you do it at the end of every post? We'll find out. Do it. See what your audience likes. Talks to some of your readers. See how they'll respond to it. And I think that's how to answer a lot of those questions. And sometimes that can seem weird, but the relationship between content creators and content receivers is that content creators and readers. I mean, it's a much different relationship than it was 20 years ago.
That's true. And I always tell my clients, do split testing. Like you just said,
A/B split
try it.
testing, absolutely.
See,
Huge
yeah,
component of
A/B
it.
testing, split testing, same
Yeah.
thing. So try different things and see how your audience reacts. I think that's another great tip.
Even we're not doing it right now, but even with titles we were talking about earlier, there's really simple plugins you can do to A/B test titles.
If you're using
a ton
WordPress.
of data on what works for your audience. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great tip. All right, Christopher, thank you so much. Remind us again where everybody can subscribe and visit you.
Head out to Public Square Magazine at publicsquaremag.org. Sign up for our newsletter, like us on Facebook, and we will love to have you as one of our new readers. And Trina, thank you so much for having me on. Any excuse to hang out with you for a little bit is a good one. Working in sort of the Latter-day Saint publishing space, Trina and I are both in, what does the actual letter stand for? LDSPMA, Latter-day Saint Publishing and Media Association is what it is now. And so she runs the marketing track at their annual conference, and I'm now helping with the annual awards, recognizing the best in LDS publishing for the previous year. So I know you said that your audience, of course, is welcome to everyone, but that you have a lot of Latter-day Saints. So if you are a Latter-day Saint who is interested in taking your career seriously, I would recommend the conference very much. It's very, very helpful. I came the first year and loved it, and then presented last year, and it's been great. And always great people there too. I mean,
Yes.
just amazing folks.
The
In fact,
presenters are amazing, but the attendees are amazing too, I think. I
oh,
think
that's
it's a
true.
fantastic
Yeah.
conference.
I was going to say, I was able to pitch Orson Scott Card on something I wanted them to do.
I
Just
know.
the conference. Yeah, it was crazy. So.
Orson Scott Card. Hello. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So thank you for mentioning that, Christopher. And so what's awesome about the conference is it is for writers, editors, publishers, whether you're a published author or not, you're invited, but singers, musicians, filmmakers, magazine people.
It's so interesting. I'm so writing. I mean, that's kind of where my career's always been. I haven't really thought about the other media, and it's been so good. There's so much crossover and so much we can learn from each other, and we're all learning the same. So much of the information applies to all of us equally. So it's been a great. I
Yeah.
think having that as the group combined, I think is a real benefit to the organization. I think whoever
I
kind of
agree.
makes that
And
decision is very wise.
absolutely. You know, I am a movie reviewer at
Yeah.
moviereviewmom.com. And this year for 2020, as part of our conference, we're going to do a big filmmakers track and do some really special things. So I love rubbing shoulders with all of these creatives. It's a fantastic conference. And whether you attend the LDS PMA conference or any other, I think both of us would encourage you to attend conferences where you can network, rub shoulders with people who are doing what you want to do or doing it maybe better than what you're doing, or simply collaborate with people who are doing what you want to be doing too. I think it's a really great part of stepping up your professional interests in what might have started out as a hobby could now be an actual money-making career. Yep.
Thanks, Trina.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Christopher. I appreciate all of your great wisdom. Thanks for sharing your tips with my audience. Bye.